Alrighty, hello every folks, and good morning. Are you ready for a little bit of a blast from the past that suddenly got new news, seemingly out of nowhere? Because I know I wasn't expecting this. I was expecting to cover some Against the Storm today, but anyway, let's go ahead and talk about Unsung Story. Okay, so for those unfamiliar with this, I'm not shocked because this is one that's kind of flown under the radar for the better part of the last decade, and it's a very strange project. It's one that ran into a lot of problems, led to a lot of bad feelings from a lot of developers and whatnot. And anyways, let's go ahead and gonna get into this here. I mean, hell, according to some folks that I've talked to, they were theorizing this is why we never got another ogre game. Uh, but a little bit of a brief, I guess, overview of what happened here. So, Unsung Story originally is essentially something that was supposed to be something of a kind of a return to form for Matsuno. He had agreed to jump on board with a Kickstarter. Basically, he would write the story, they would create the game. Now, I want to point out, while it says created by Little Orbit here, this is the folks running the project now are not the same folks that ran it originally. Basically, what had happened was the original folks ended up going and rug pulling the project back in the day. They just took the money and ran, but Matsuno had still done a story for this thing, and a bunch of work had been put into the game on another end of it. So there was another kind of group of folks that came by. They bought the rights to the project. They ended up trying to get it into some playable state, and ultimately that's where Unsung Story has been kind of unsinging its story for a good number of years now. It's a project that's still technically sitting up there with this same Kickstarter and whatnot, but yeah, it's been kind of lamenting in the depths for a while. And the thing was, they had some information come out here or there. Now, I don't know how much of this is actually shareable. One of the benefits of covering a lot of this stuff pretty regularly is that people will share tidbits of information for the folks that, were there from the original Kickstarter. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff that they post on there that that they would exclusively have access to and whatnot. But there were a good bit of there was a good bit of unfortunate feedback that came because they had switched the art style of the game. A lot of the visuals looked very odd. Basically, kind of looked like sort of almost WoW-esque visuals, if you ask me. Um, but the concept was somewhat interesting, being something along the lines of like if Mitsuno had written Radiant Historia or something, being what effectively was described as sort of like a time loop situation where you have a party that's repeatedly going and reliving the story, trying to improve the timeline every time they go through. Um, so either way, very interesting idea for a thing that unfortunately got a little bit screwed. So out of nowhere, there was a bit of news. So October 2024, out of nowhere. When's the previous update before this? Out of curiosity, because I remember not hearing about anything about this for a long time. And usually, whenever there were updates, they usually came with a little message attached of like, "Hey, technically this was only for the Kickstarter stuff, so don't cover it." But this time around, it's just sort of publicly there, so that's pretty cool. Anyway, let's go ahead and take a look here. So this is update number 147. So getting back on track. And hopefully this will give a little bit of appreciation for kind of what they're dealing with with this project at this point. So dear backers, it's been far too long since my last update. In August 2017, we took this project over from Playdeck after their failed attempt to deliver a game that the backers paid for. That's a generous way to put it. Anyway, in December 2020, we shipped early access for Chapter 1. We shipped what we thought was a great start to the final game, but we were wrong. Unfortunately, there were a couple of areas that players liked. Most of the feedback from early access was overwhelmingly negative. Again, cool ideas, weird presentation. In fact, it put the project into a super weird limbo. Chapter 1 was clearly bad enough that continuing with the game direction was only going to disappoint the backers and fans of the project, but it wasn't so bad that I felt we should abandon the whole thing. Alright, Chapter 1 Early Access Feedback Recap. If you want to get back up to speed, here's the post where I detailed the feedback from Chapter 1. Ooh, we're gonna read through that in just a moment. The short version was, the feedback said, the main characters should be unique and look cool. The 3D portraits with talking mouths didn't work. Characters in the narrative have stereotypical motivations with too much dialogue making the cutscenes feel flat. Yeah, that's especially weird for a Matsuno game, because, like, dude's known for getting straight to the point. Alright, mixing and matching jobs wasn't present enough for Chapter 1. The Opus hub has a completely different movement system, and it's difficult to find specific functionality. The jobs themselves felt poorly balanced with some overlapping. Some have tons of abilities, some only have a few, and their power levels were wildly different. Harmony system was not well received, missing all the female models for Yuna. So that's oddly specific. Alright, let's go back to February 2021. Do we have any pictures for this? Huh. Wow, so apparently this was the... No, this is update 117, so this was like 30 updates ago. Alright. So let's see. Let's go ahead and see what they elaborated on the feedback. So 1, the main character doesn't have a unique look. I'll take the blame for this one. Part of the central theme of this game is unsung heroes, or people who had a huge impact but are lost to time. So we don't really know what they looked like. That narrative seed inspired us to add something that very few other tactics games offer, a customization system. We thought it would be really cool to have the theme reflected in the mechanics of the character creation itself. Okay, I like that. That's pretty cool. Bear in mind, by the way, I'm gonna be completely... Like, I've completely forgotten a bunch of stuff about this one. I remember the time loop kind of thing. I remember some of the visuals looking very WoW-esque. The rest of it is just like, poof. It's just gone. It's been that long. Let's see. As a central figure of the game and a core around which several of our themes develop, we took the same customization approach with Rhyme, our main character. Looking over our feedback, I think this pushed a little too far outside the player expectations, without delivering on the narrative system we had hoped, especially since Unsung Story is meant to be a spiritual successor to Final Fantasy Tactics. The Tactics genre overall is often very heavy on narrative, so there is a long and storied history of unique-looking main characters for players to follow. But unintentionally removing the hook of a visually distinct and developed character, we undermined one of the main levers that we have to draw players into the story. We spent time discussing this issue, and based on a few other changes we would also like to make, we have decided to do a custom design for Rhyme and lock in his look. We already planned to do this for other major story characters, so it made sense to add Rhyme to that category instead of treating him as a generic unit. All of your other units will remain visually customizable, so we can stay true to the unsung hero theme mechanically, but this approach also gives us a new hook to draw people into the story. Bit of a thing for this. There's actually something that March of the Black Queen did, kind of, that I always wanted to see more from one of these games, which is not necessarily to say that they don't have a look, but just like somewhat soft randomized look. So like in March of the Black Queen, specifically the PS1 version, I should point out, as it wasn't present in the other ones, but like after character creation, when you had your main character pop out, the only choice you had was male or female. For everything else, it was determined on your question answers. And so, for example, like, let's say you had a version of, like, Destin or Europia that, let's say, was a ice caster, and they would just come in with a blue and white outfit as opposed to their standard one. Or I believe the samurai one was, like, more of a black getup or something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head, because most of the time I liked the blue look. But honestly, just some kind of palette swaps to change a few things about the character might be a way to kind of get both here. Just kind of throwing it out there. I don't know, it's just come to mind, but let's go ahead and continue on. Alright, so characters seem to have stereotypical motivations and flat characterization in the narrative. First off, I want to say that we hear you. Many of these issues were also brought up before by a small batch of external testers before the beta, so I can't really say I was surprised to see it in the feedback. When we were working on this first chapter, we felt it most important to get the game into your hands so that we could start these sorts of discussions rather than push things back yet again. The bones are there, but we know the writing itself needs work. Listening to your feedback has led to some very cool writing decisions with the team, and we've already begun the process of polishing and improving on our major story beats. I personally love how the changes are coming along, and I hope you'll all appreciate the improvements as well. Okay, so it doesn't really say too much there. And I honestly don't know how much of the story was originally like something that Matsuno came up with, how much is stuff that these guys are working on. I assume he came up with the overall skeleton of the story, and then they're just kind of like filling in the gaps or whatnot. I don't know. Either way, apparently this whole thing left such a sour taste in his mouth that he just went off to go work on MMOs for a good number of years. Anyway, so dialogue is too much exposition and cutscenes feel flat. Hi there, triangle strategy problem. Now some of this could be from item number 2, but generally speaking, no one liked the animated heads during cutscenes. Yeah, it kind of looked a bit RuneScape 3-esque. It was another experiment we implemented to allow players to see Rhyme's customizations more often. Unfortunately, in the end, the moving heads were just too distracting. We went back to the drawing board and come up with something that I think players will like a bit better. I think this new strategy will also make our cutscenes a bit more compelling. Good. Yeah, moving heads are they only sometimes work. Like, I mean, it's the same thing that you saw in something like RuneScape there, but like they were usually kept so basic that that it tended to still sort of be okay. Other than them being goofy, I don't remember too many details about this particular one. Alright, so where can I mix and match jobs, wire all tactics along the way to tease the Opus Hub and wait until after Mission 4 to pay that off? Unfortunately, many players only played the first 2 missions and then gave up when they couldn't figure out how to upgrade, buy equipment, or change jobs. You can see that in the reviews. Players only spent 1 hour or less generally rated the game worse than players who stuck with it a bit longer, so again, we put on our thinking caps and found a better solution. We are reworking the early levels to allow customization much sooner, and we'll be unlocking the features of the Opus Hub a little at a time instead of all at once. This has several advantages. First, we give people access to the good stuff sooner, thereby increasing early mission and strategy and showcasing the game's potential right off the bat. Second, by opening features periodically, we all avoid the all-or-nothing approach that may have been a bit overwhelming for some players. Finally, third, this gives us opportunities to tutorialize our systems in a natural and engaging way. And that's actually another thing that I've noticed with a lot of, like, this is a weird kind of angle for an indie or whatever else, but a lot of times indie projects, whenever they're copying the official stuff, that initial gap for features and whatever else, it's like with a lot of bigger budget stuff, there's usually kind of enough, I guess you could say, a cost investment from somebody going into that you know they kind of will be willing to wait those extra few missions, chapters, hours, what have you at the beginning. But yeah, for a lot of indie stuff, like, they just got to get going right away, or else people are going to tune out immediately. Yeah, you see that all the time. Let's see. And then lastly, the Opus Hub, people were saying that they didn't like the movement or whatever else. I do have to cut this part slightly short, because there is a lot more to cover here, and kind of running a little short on time here. Okay, so let's continue on. So that's mostly what they were covering there. So they were missing a lot of features. So over the next couple of months, posted our new general direction and a few other updates. The summary was create a new, cooler, locked character design for Rhyme. For dialogue sequences, replace 3D models, the bobbleheads with more classic painted art with different expressions. That looks terrifying. Anyway, do a significant rewrite of the narratives to slim down dialogue and provide better motivations. Still have the twists and turns of the overall story, rework the entire combat design and status effect system to provide more tactical gameplay, rework all the jobs to fit new combat status system, including a new skill tree with more balanced gameplay between jobs, swap all the UI elements in combat to make a more classic menu-based system, eliminating the need for a less popular Diablo-style UI. Oh yeah, right, yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, swap all the UI elements in the Opus to a more classic menu-based system that properly exposes all the metagame and management functionality, rework the entire Harmony system to provide more technical gameplay, and then finish up the female models. Yeah, so yeah, this looks way better overall, so that's definitely an improvement there. These were the old kind of bobbleheady looking things, and then we had the painted ones over here. And part of it is just a lot of these types of games are typically coming from that more kind of like tabletop or book like aesthetic, and so this just generally helps with kind of carry over some of that. Okay, carrying on. So in 2021-22, we did some heavy lifting on the design and nearly every aspect of the combat system. There's a bunch of updates from that period extensively detailing those changes, and as part of that effort, we also tried to address the feedback from the game's other systems. We actually got the title back into development, and some of the new systems were implemented for basic testing. Last couple years have not been kind. 2023 was rough for our studio and the game industry overall, and yeah, not to mention, this is like all post-COVID. I'm not going to detail all of our struggles here, but when things take a downturn, the effects can be disastrous across the board. We took on some extra development work for a partner, then ended up not getting paid when they went under, leaving us hundreds of thousands of dollars in the hole. Oh, damn, that sucks. We also tried bringing in some external teams to help push projects forward, and those teams took advantage of us by turning in horribly subpar work. All those efforts had to be entirely rewritten. At Little Orbit, the buck stops with me. Over the last 2 years, I had to personally step in and finish off several projects one at a time to get the company caught up. 12 to 14-hour days takes its toll, and honestly haven't had much brain space for anything else. But that doesn't change the fact that it has been nearly 2 years since my last update, and while there are a million reasons for those delays, that lack of communication is simply inexcusable. For that, I'm sincerely sorry. Community complaints. Clearly, in the absence of updates, the community's frustration has grown a lot, and this update would be disingenuous if it didn't address the comments or requests for refunds. It's a little bit rich to see folks still requesting refunds after everything that happened over the last decade. Anyway, so I want to explicitly state that this project is not dead. I have seen the requests for refunds, and while those requests may seem simple on the surface, nothing about this project is simple. Regardless of taking over the project, the October 2012... Okay, it was even earlier than I was originally stating. The October 2012 terms and conditions do not allow the transfer of legal liability from the original owner to Little Orbit, and unfortunately, I don't think Playdeck is in business anymore. Yeah, didn't they friggin', like, just run for the hills? Like, as far as I understood, they just kind of scammed everyone and ran. As previously stated, we didn't get any of the money raised, but Little Orbit has spent considerable money to get the project this far. We've delivered a completely playable Chapter 1 experience, and we finished work with Sakamoto on the promised soundtrack. So even Sakamoto's on board. Like, again, they got the stuff that they needed on paper, and then the development side is what kind of flew face first into the shredder. Okay. I fully recognize that we are still well short of delivering on the backer awards, but rather than debate on the validity of refunds, I want to focus on doing a better job with updates and delivering the game with the rewards that were promised. To that end, we recently pulled everything out of the archives and got the latest code built so the team could get back up to speed. So the path forward, we are currently going screen by screen through the entire thing to create a project plan for the remaining tasks, and I'll publish that here on the Kickstarter. After that, we'll be building out and publishing a new sprint/milestone plan with the development target dates. Where do we leave off? I'll wrap up this update with a couple screenshots from the internal build where we left development. Disclaimer, there's a fairly significant rework of the combat UI coming that ditches the ability slot favor in favor of a more classic TRPG menu system. None of that got implemented yet, which I'm personally glad for. Like, this kind of stuff gets used for a lot of things, like the sort of like WoW-esque slot system. It doesn't, I don't know, for me personally, it's never really fit with stuff like this, but it depends on the game. Like something like Last Spell or something, it works out just fine. But that's typically because there's not really too much necessarily moving back and forth. A lot of your stuff is going to be fairly stable, but you need to be able to slot stuff in and out of there. I really liked the tour system, obviously, with just, you have the same icons, you just have them up here in the center, and you just move them around based on where they are in the skill bar. Everything's just a series of cookies moving around, rather than a bar that's trying to look MMO-esque. Personally, as far as MMO looks, to my mind, it's the total opposite of what TRPG should be trying to do, because they're trying to be entirely different things. In MMOs, the UI is out of the way, so that you are walking around in the world and none of your bars are necessarily there until you need them. Whereas with something like a TRPG, that stuff typically is more in your face, because it kind of has to be. It's more like you're paying more attention to the map and the numbers and things like that, so you want that information around, not hidden away. But that's just a personal opinion. Anyway, moving on. So, initiative and turn order changes. You can see now that we alternate between all of the players' units and then all the enemy units. The speed of each team is still collectively calculated from the unit speeds, but we found that being able to directly control the order the units attack on your turn opened up a lot more tactical choices and played better with our harmony system. I don't remember what the harmony system is, but I will say I hope more stuff copies what Rad Codex does, wherein they kind of had a mix of both. So, like, the old wait time approach does work when it works, but it's way more complicated to implement, and it's why a lot of folks get confused about something like Tactics Ogre, why some folks get confused over why it takes so long to get their turn in FFT and stuff like that. And you get the usual, like, somebody gets multiple turns because they knew how to manipulate the system kind of thing, where somebody cries bullshit that somebody cheated or whatnot. But when it comes to turn-based stuff, what I really liked about Rad Codex's approach is that they basically said, okay, look, you control your entire team, but based off of your actions, you basically can wind up with letting the enemy units act first, or throwing people kind of backwards in time or what have you, or throwing out timed moves. It gives kind of the same feeling of having a constantly moving timeline, while also still more or less having a kind of team-based thing. And again, you know, the kind of XCOM approach where you let your entire team move first also works, but I personally liked that approach where you kind of got the best of both worlds, you know? I wanted to see more games try that. Anyway, let's see. Stat effects. For testing, we implemented the stat effect system along with a number of abilities. We put these on the player's team in the first fight just to play with. So... Can we see any of that here? Apparently stuff is happening. I don't know. I can't quite tell much on this screenshot here. Apparently this thing has a stacked burn effect. Cool. Combat. Lastly, we implemented the main combat design changes. Here you see that Burn 3 has been stacked twice on the same microbot. We still need to work on surfacing the status of units better. In the UI, yeah, I can't, like, just looking at this, without knowing that this thing was on fire, I would not necessarily know that it was on fire. Let's take another look here. I mean, it's slightly red, I guess? They say you see, I do not see. Maybe I'm blind or something. I don't know. But, either way, I don't exactly know what to make of the changes yet, because I don't have any kind of access to, you know, any of the, any of the builds or what have you. But either way, it's fascinating that this thing is basically just out of, seemingly coming back from the dead for Halloween, so, you know, that's thematically fitting. And yeah, hopefully they see this through, because I remember this being a concept that was very interesting. I don't know what the twists and turns are in the story that were apparently getting folks excited. Don't know kind of where the systems of it are at this point, but it's good to see that it's back. They seem to be trying. They seem to be having either atrocious luck or potentially sketchy judge of character situations going on. When it comes to the management side of things, I've heard folks insisting very vehemently in both directions, so I personally don't know. I just hope that this project releases at some point, because I want another Matsuno game, damn it. Yeah, that's kind of about that. That's where this one sits, more or less. Its story is still as unsung as it was before, but it's slightly starting to hum a little bit. Alright. Y'all have yourselves a good one. Take care, and I'll leave a link to all of this in the description there, you know, in case you want to follow along with it yourself. And obviously, the folks that are actually pledging the thing will have access to more information. But I don't even know if they were taking new people at this point, were they? Like, they do have the option to go follow along, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know. So supposedly that button will do stuff. I don't know if they're, again, taking people still. But I would assume they probably are, because it sounds like they've had one hell of a ride. Alright, anyway, y'all have yourselves a good one. I will see you if there's more stuff to update on this, and yeah, back to the previously scheduled whole list of other stuff I'm trying to get to. Okay, bye.